So you talked about free speech and the First Amendment, and of course, Vince and I are big fans of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
You also big fan. You also co-sponsored the Anti-Israel Boycott Act, which criminalized boycotting Israel and Israeli settlements. Regardless of how anyone feels about Israel or Israeli settlements, isn't that a violation of the First Amendment when you start criminalizing boycotts? Do you believe that political voices should be silenced by the federal government?
So I don't believe you're accurate that I've sponsored anything that criminalizes BDS. I think BDS is a vicious and offensive movement.
Absolutely, disagree with it all you want. My fear,
but I don't believe I've sponsored anything that criminalizes it. Now I would cut off government funds for it, but there's a difference. But between that, I don't think we have to fund it. I don't think the government has an obligation to pay for vicious anti-Semitic movements. But look, I am a passionate defender of the First Amendment, and I defend people who attack me nonstop. I defend the left's rights of free speech, and I will say this, Jason. One of the frustrating things, there used to be a really vibrant liberal tradition of defending free speech. One of the seminal free speech cases at the Supreme Court is a case where you had a guy that was wearing a jacket that said F the draft, although he didn't just have F, he spelled it out. And the court upheld his right to wear that jacket and to express his views. What I find deeply disturbing is today's Democratic Party has abandoned that tradition. And a story, so I've got, in my book, One Vote Away, I have a whole chapter on free speech. And I describe in detail, in 2014, the effort of Democrats to amend the Bill of Rights and to repeal the free speech protections of the First Amendment. And in particular, so in 2014, Democrats introduced a constitutional amendment. The first version of the amendment gave Congress plenary power, blanket power, to regulate any and all political speech that involved in any way, shape, or form the expenditure of money. Under that bill, it meant that Congress could make it a criminal offense for a little old lady to go down to Home Depot, buy a stick and a poster board, and put up a sign that says, vote for Joe Biden or vote for Donald Trump. Congress could make that a political offense if she spent $5 on a poster board. Congress could also make it a criminal offense for a union organizer to organize people in unions if they spend even $1 doing so. It was grotesque. It was so bad that actually Democrats abandoned that and they moved to a second version, which gave Congress blanket power to regulate political speech, but only of corporations. So the first version included individuals. It included the little old lady. Democrats realized that was untenable. So they moved to the second version that said Congress has blanket power to regulate political speech of corporations. I was the ranking member on the Constitution Subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I asked a series of questions. Under this, should Congress have the power to ban books? Should Congress have the power to ban movies? Should Congress have the power to ban the NAACP from speaking about politics? Those are the three questions I asked in the hearing. Now, my answers to those three are no, no, and hell no. Under the Democrats' amendment, Congress would have blanket power. Simon & Schuster is a corporation. Under the Democrats' amendment, Congress could pass a law that says it will be a criminal offense for Simon & Schuster to publish any book critical of Donald J. Trump. That would be constitutionally permissible for Congress to pass that. That's insane. The NAACP is a corporation. Under the Democrats' amendment, Congress could pass a bill saying the NAACP must publicly disclose every donor and it cannot speak on any issue of public policy subject to imprisonment if they do. That is insane. We had a vote, Jason, on the floor of the Senate. I gave an impassioned floor speech. I had a picture of Ted Kennedy next to me because Democrats had previously tried to do something similar. Ted Kennedy said, "We haven't amended the Bill of Rights in 200 years, and now is no time to start." I had Ted Kennedy's picture with that quote next to me, and I called out, isn't there one Democrat who believes in free speech? We voted on the Democrats' amendment to repeal the free speech protection. of the First Amendment. Do you know how many Democrats voted to keep the First Amendment as is? Zero. Not a single one. Every single Democrat voted to repeal the free speech protections of the First Amendment.
So, Senator Cruz, we've got to wrap up. But I will say this: speaking of civil libertarian politics, I think that when you start saying that the government will not fund you if you have a particular political view, what does that happen if someone, say, is against a war and then the government decides we don't want to give you Social Security? I think that that's a slippery slope that I think you're working with the anti-BDS stuff. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it. I understand both sides, why they agree and why they disagree. But what I will say is that it is a slippery slope saying we are not going to fund anything that disagrees because we have a particular political view. I think that that's a dangerous place to be.